thin wet sky that yellows at rain and meets with the sun lost. Lip the moss brim. The pool slow line, dank with moss and mold, glints through the meadows like large cup of gold. Among the white rice in the still lagoon, in monotone the lizard shrills his tune. The wild goose booming six are sheltering, where rushes grow and oozing lichens cling. Late cranes with heavy wing and lazy flight sail up the silence with the nearing night. Are like a spirit swept in some soft way, still twilight and the shadows o'er the swaying. House like the sages and the vapors creep, thick gray and humid while the masses sleep.
Well, good evening, guys. Let me point out you just read the chapter or the poem which is called as Marshlands by Emily Pauline Johnson, right? Now, when you talk about this particular poem, right, can anybody tell me that how many line poem this one is?
So,
How many lines are they? Yeah.
Seven. Yes, sir, seven. Seven lines.
Is it a 7 line poems?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir, because each in paragraph.
Sir, can I say?
Sir, in each part of the poem, there are 2 lines, but if you say it
Ha.
according to the full stop, it's 7 lines. But if you say according to the paragraphs, it's 14 lines.
My goodness, we didn't grow up.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, as here in the first line there is a means comma sign, so it will not take complete sentences. If it goes through a full stop, so it will be 7 lines.
Okay, cool, guys. By the way, it's a 14 line poem, right? So it's a 14. Yeah.
Sir, it's a sonnet.
Yeah, it's
So
a
14-line poem is a sonnet.
yeah, it's a 14 line
I
poem.
want both of you.
Listen, listen to the topic carefully. So once the topic Marshlands, which is written by Emily Pauline Johnson. So who tries to paint a picture of the life residing in a marshland as night approaches and appears the ecosystem into silence, right? Now, if you talk about this poem carries with lots of figure of speech, right? So, Marshlands by Pauline Johnson is nothing but a 14 line poem that is divided into 7 couplets. How many of you know the meaning called as a couplet? Couplet?
2 lines.
Yes. Yeah, couplet is called as a 2 lines, right? So a couplet is a literary device that is made up of 2 rhyming lines of verse, right? तो यहाँ पे अगर simply कहा जाए, so what you would find out, now we are talking about Marshlands. So Marshlands के बारे में discuss कर रहे हैं, जिसके poet हैं Emily Pauline Johnson. And एक चीज आप दिमाग में रख लो, that's called as a, means when you are reading the poem, do not compare the poem with the prose. Prose carries paragraph, poem carries stanza, right? And when we talk about poem carries stanza, so means whether it ends with the comma or whether it ends with the full stop or it ends with a hyphen or a dash or a question mark, right? So on the basis of the line, we consider that means how many lines are there, right? And how many stanzas are there, right? So therefore, if you go to this particular poem, Marshlands by Emily Pauline Johnson, so it's a 14 line poem, right? Which is divided into 7 couplets. So couplets means, couplet का मतलब क्या होता है? That's called as a couplets. Couplets का मतलब होता है कि 2 lines, 2 लाइन करके मीन्स कोई एक आइडिया को आप कॉपलेट्स के हिसाब से कंसिडर करते हो। तो अगर यहाँ पे मीन्स 7 कॉपलेट्स हैं तो इसका मतलब हर एक कॉपलेट यहाँ पे 2 लाइन्स प्रेजेंट करता है, 2 लाइन प्रेजेंट करता है, एंड दैट्स व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड एज अ 14 लाइन्स, राइट। एंड इट इज पॉसिबल टू कंसिडर के दैट इट इज अ पीस ऑफ सन्नेट। सो इफ आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट, तो इसको हम सन्नेट भी कहते हैं। सन्नेट का मतलब क्या होता है ना, सन्नेट का मतलब ही होता है 14 लाइन पोएम्स। और ये जो 14 लाइन पोएम्स है वो पर्टिकुलरली फॉलो करता है स्ट्रिक्ट राइम स्कीम and conform to the metrical pattern of music pentameter, right? So और iambic pentameter, तो देखा जाए तो इसमें 14 ये एक 14 लाइन पोएम्स है फर्स्ट। सेकंड चीज है या इसका जो राइमिंग स्कीम है वो मीन्स iambic pentameter के हिसाब से प्रेजेंट किया गया है, right? So due to its rhyme and rhythm schemes, rhyme and rhythm schemes and the number of lines, so number of lines, rhyming scheme and rhythm, right? उसकी वजह से we can consider that ये एक सन्नेट है, right? जिसका मतलब 14 lines poem। और हर एक मीन्स यू कैन ऑल्सो कंसिडर दैट ये 7 कपलेट्स के हिसाब से पॉइंट आउट किया गया है। सो द कपलेट राइम्स परफेक्टली, सो यहाँ पे जो दो कपलेट्स है वो परफेक्टली राइम करते हैं। तो एक कपलेट ए अगर है तो दूसरा कपलेट बी है, तीसरा कपलेट सी है, एंड चौथा कपलेट डी है। एंड लाइक दैट यू वुड फाइंड आउट sequentially, you would find out 7 couplets are there, right? एंड इसका जो मेट्रिकल पैटर्न है वो इयाम्बिक पेंटामीटर। सो इयाम्बिक पेंटामीटर का मतलब क्या होता है ना, इट इज अ वेरी कॉमन वे दैट लाइन्स ऑफ पोएट्री आर स्ट्रक्चर। सो जिस हिसाब से पोएट्री का लाइन्स स्ट्रक्चर किया जाता है तो उसके बेस पे हम कहते हैं कि वो मीन्स किस टाइप का मीटर कैरी करता है। ईच लाइन, इस पोएम में हर एक लाइन कैरीज करता है क्या, 5 सेट्स ऑफ बिट्स, राइट? 5 सेट्स ऑफ 2 बिट्स। द फर्स्ट इज मीन्स बीट्स किसको कहा जाता है, जहां पे हम स्ट्रेस देते हैं और जहां पे हम स्ट्रेस नहीं देते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज अनस्ट्रेस्ड एंड स्ट्रेस्ड। सो अनस्ट्रेस्ड और स्ट्रेस्ड हम हर एक लाइन में अगर देखा जाए तो मीन्स हर एक लाइन में 5 क्या है ना, 5 सेट्स ऑफ 2 बीट्स आर देयर, राइट? मतलब 5 सेट्स ऑफ अनस्ट्रेस्ड एंड स्ट्रेस्ड बीट्स आर देयर। तो जिसके वजह से इसको कहा जाता है इयाम्बिक पेंटामीटर। तो रिमेंबर दैट हर एक लाइन में आपको इयाम्बिक पेंटामीटर मिलेगा। सो और एक चीज है,
So can you describe a pentameter again?
पेंटामीटर का मतलब क्या होता है, जैसे आप कहते हो क्वाट्रेन, क्वाट्रेन कहते हो, क्वाट्रेन का मतलब 4। जैसे आप कहते हो कॉपलेट, कॉपलेट का मतलब 2। सो जैसे आप कहते हो मीन्स सेस्टेट, सेस्टेट का मतलब 6। तो पेंटामीटर का मतलब क्या होता है, 5 होता है, राइट? तो इयाम्बिक पेंटामीटर किसको कहते हैं ना, इयाम्बिक पेंटामीटर मीन्स एक कॉमन वे है एक लाइन को जस्टिस करने के लिए। जैसे कि कोई भी आप एक गाना गाओ तो उस गाने में कुछ वर्ड्स होते हैं जिसके वजह से आपका जो साउंड पैटर्न होता है वो हाई होता है और कोई एक जगह पे लो भी होता है, राइट? तो उसको कहते हैं स्ट्रेस्ड एंड अनस्ट्रेस्ड। उस हिसाब से इस पोएम में भी आपका हर एक लाइन क्या कैरी करता है, 5 सेट्स ऑफ बीट्स कैरी करते हैं। तो वो जो 5 सेट्स ऑफ बीट्स हैं, राइट? सो 5 सेट्स ऑफ बीट्स विच एंड हर एक बीट हर एक सेट यहाँ पे 2 बीट्स कैरी करता है। तो इसका मतलब क्या है ना, 5 सेट्स ऑफ 2 बीट्स, राइट? सो ये बीट्स किसको कहा जाता है, मीन्स स्ट्रेस्ड एंड अनस्ट्रेस्ड। स्ट्रेस्ड का मतलब जहां पे आप कोई एक वर्ड को जब प्रोनाउंस करते हो तो वहां पे आप स्ट्रेस देते हो, राइट? जैसे हम कहते हैं ना गेट डाउन, सो यहाँ पे स्ट्रेस किसके ऊपर है, गे, गेट डाउन, राइट? गेट g and d, उसके ऊपर stress है. So if I say that sit down, so say s के ऊपर stress है, and जब आप down आते हो तो down को down, sit down. So you are not stressing on n. That is what called as a stress and unstress, right? तो यहाँ पे भी उस हिसाब से आपको 5 sets of 2 bits मिलेंगे. The first is unstressed and the second one is called as a stressed. So जिसमें पहला वाला आपका स्ट्रेस नहीं है, लेकिन जब आप दूसरे को जाते हो वहां पे स्ट्रेस आता है, राइट? सो हर एक लाइन यहाँ पे 5 sets of 2 bits कैरी कर रहा है. The first of this, so do you understand that? यहाँ पे आपको क्या मिला? The poem is a sonnet, right? It carries 14 lines, and we find out 7 couplets are there. Each couplet carries with the two means lines which have a same rhyming scheme, like A, B, B, C, C, D, D, like that. 7 couplets are there. So that is the reason we called it as the means sonnet. Second thing is called as each line presents with 5 sets of 2 bits, right? Which is starting with the unstressed, and the means next one is called as a stressed, right? So now if I go for the next, the first of these is called as unstressed and the second one is called as a stress. ये जो पैटर्न है along with rhyme scheme, उसके अलावा भी means rhyming scheme है. Rhyming scheme आपको पता है is the pattern of rhyme that used in a poem. It corresponds with the end sound that feature in line of verse. So हर एक poem में आपको means कोई ना कोई rhyming scheme मिलेगा. So यहाँ पे भी it rhyming scheme gives the poem a steady lulling rhythm, right? When we say that lulling rhythm, so it means called as you must have heard the word called as a lullaby, right? बचपन में बच्चों को गाना लोरी सुनाया जाता था. So उस टाइप का lulling rhythm which helps to describe, emphasize the peaceful and romanticized picture of the marshland, right? Marshlands, right? So means जिसके जरिए क्या होता है, means describe किया जाता है एक peaceful romanticized picture of what? Na picture of the marshland. Now if you observe this poem, what do you find out? Now the speaker begins this piece of the poem with an initial description, right? Initial description of the main subject, right? So when you talk about that, the subject, it means the subject of a poem might also be called the main idea, right? So main idea, goal or thing about which the poem is concerned, जिसके ऊपर पूरा का पूरा poem depend करता है. So the speaker begins with this particular poem with an initial description of the main subject, right? So the marshlands, right? That being said, the appropriate label for the land is less important. Land is less important than the general feelings, right? So land is less important than what? The general feelings that are brought across by it, right? So the text or the poem of this piece is primarily nothing but a descriptive one. Primarily descriptive means what? The poem can be called as a describing certain place or certain object or certain elements. So that is the reason, means not only prose where we find out one particular object is described, in poem also we find out means a particular means situation or event or a person or a nature element that is also described. But those same descriptions are emotionally tinged, are connected. So here the poet's word choice are something called as a poignant and texture, right? So carrying with the quality, one is able to take more than just surface level information from the lines, right? So very ordinary, but at the same time very interesting. There is a general feeling of mystery around the land, right? So when we talk about Marshland, so it makes a kind of a mystery around the land. It is dark and in some places dank, DANK, but it is also filled with what? Life, right? The place which may be called as the imaginary part of the poet's life. So it presents a kind of a romanticized picture, right, of the array of life residing or living in a marshland. As night comes near, cast the ecosystem into silence. So once means the night comes out, so what happened? The environment gets into the silence, right? So uh, once we go into the kind of a main theme of the poem, we can point out the poem begins with the speaker stating that. What the speaker stating here? That the sky means uh, is nothing but indicating as the land, right? The sky or the land, which is called as a thin and weight. It is very likely that a storm could come and also drench the land at any time, right? So this is a constant possibility, right, in the marshes. This is a constant possibility in the marshes means what? In the place which the poet here stated. Amongst all of the reeds, moss, and darkened corners of the land, right, there are cranes, geese, and lizards. So we all know that what the meaning of cranes, what the meaning of geese, and what the meaning of lizard. So starting from the birds, right, starting from ending with nothing but other small creature, insects, right. So these creatures represent nothing but the means wider array of animals, right, and organic life that lives in an area that is generally you can say that distasteful, not interesting, disinteresting to many onlookers, right? Many onlookers means who can be also known as the spectators, right? So the poets Johnson's speaker tracks the comings and goings of these animals and the function the plants play as night approaches. So when night comes nearer, so at the same time, what these animals do, right? How these animals function. So what is the role of means plants? How plants play when the night comes? It brings with nothing but it brings with it a heavy silence that falls over the land and will remain until the next day. So that's what you could consider the idea. Means the poet wants to convey the message that when we are talking about the marshland, maybe the marshland is referring to the darker time. Until unless you read the poem, you do not draw the idea here. Now, on the basis of that, we could simply assume that the poet is trying to state it about the activities, the function, and the behavior of means all these variety of animals, as well as means plants during the night time, right? That is what. Now, let's come to the poem. The poem starting with the what? A thin weight sky that yellows at the rim and meets with sunlust, leave the marshes brim. The pools low lying, dank with moss and mood, right, glint through their mildews like large cups of gold. Now you could see that rim, brim, mold, gold. So that's called as a AABB. So means two couplets you find out here. Now, what is the statement stated here? When it is stated a thin weight sky that yellows at the rim, right, and meets with the sun last, leave the marshes brim, right? The first line describes what? The sky, right? So it is stated, no, all thin, wet sky, right? So describe the sky that looks down over top of the marshes, that looks down over top. So of the marshes, it is nothing but thin and wet, right? It is nothing but thin and wet. And you can talk about as if at any moment it could break what? It could break open and stir, right? So the lines of the blue or more likely gray are connected with the yellow. The color runs around the rim and ends where the sun has dipped, dipped down below the brim, right? So a reader is now aware that the sun has almost disappeared from the sky, and it appears as if a storm is about to drench the land. Drench the land means that called as a cover the land, or called as a make the land uh, uh, wait. So that is what you would find out in the first line. If you go to the second line, in the second line, the marsh is described as having lip, right? Described as what? Lip and brim, right? So the point was to point out the ecosystem within it is contained. It remains inside this enclosed area, while the rest of the world operates differently, right? What does the second line point out? And meets with the sun lust leave the marshes brim. The pools low lying, dank with moss and mold, gleam through their mildews like large cups of gold, right? So when we look into this particular poem, right? So uh, what do we find out? What is the meaning of the word called as a ream and brim? What is the meaning of ream and brim? Hello, are you all there?
Yes, sir.
So what is the meaning of ream and brim?
Sir, brim and brim.
Ream and brim.
Sir, ream. Sir, but I know brim. Hello.
Ah, what is that?
Sir, brim means the top. Sir,
A-
top
okay, and
means
ream.
edge. Brim means the edge.
Okay, and brim.
Sir, ream, I think, sir, the place where sky and water meets.
Okay, then after
Rim means, I think, so rim means the edge of a container.
that's called as the outer portion.
That is brim. Sir, that is brim, which is the edge of a container, and rim is means the part where it seems to be that a water body and sky meet.
And what about the word called as dank moss? Dank and moss?
I don't know.
Yes.
The dank means like wet, like some dark, sorry, not dark, wet, gooey areas like dank, generally like in the swampy areas. And so what was the other word you said?
What is
Moss. Sir, moss is like you can say like the other, like the type of plant.
what kind of a plant it is?
So not sure. But it's like you can say like
What I can say, like,
I'm not able to like I know it, but I'm not able to state it. It's something like a fungi, I think.
okay.
I
And
believe.
anyone else?
Sir,
Anyone else who could give the idea of it? What do you mean by means
no, sir.
moss? See, like it is stated about.
Sir,
Go
sir,
ahead.
moss is actually a kind of unwanted plant,
Plant.
which is
Ah,
which grows due to like related
Sir,
to
due to
bacteria.
sir, when water is
Where do
placed
you
in the
find
same
out?
point for many days, so
Where,
mosses came.
No, that is algae. Moss is different. Sir, moss is a dependent plant which feeds on which asks for shelter from other plants or materials, and they absorb their nutrients and live. They are unwanted plants, we can say, because they are grow naturally without any seeds or anything.
and what do you mean by marshland?
Some
Marshland.
mustard, I don't know.
So like it's like you can see the area where the mangrove trees and all grow, or like plants grown, and you can see a place full of water.
So can we say that a marsh is
Sir,
a
actually, I think marshland refers to a place very greenery or grassy land. Yeah, and the plantation is inside the water with a few outside. No. That's mangrove. You are going to Sundarban. No, that would be marshland. No, not Sundarban. Mangrove. I have seen. Mangrove, bro. No, I'm saying on marshlands only. Bro, I just saw it today in I just saw marshland myself. Yeah, marshland.
see marshland could be called as a type of a wetland, right? Isn't it? Marshland is what
Sir, but
actually?
it's kind of grassy instead of
Yeah. I understood that it is a kind of a grassy one, but shrubs are also there, but it's called as an area of land where water covers ground for long periods of time, right? So, but not like swamps, right? Which are dominated by trees. Marshes are usually
that is known as mangroves.
so
So
marshes.
this is referring to mangroves.
Yeah, marshes are usually treeless and dominated by grasses and other herbaceous plant, right? So you can say that marshland is referring to a type of wetland, an area of land where water covers ground, right? So fine, no issue. So what I am trying to say that what the idea which is presented in the first stanza. So what does it try to say? It tries to say that means how the thin weight sky, right? So that means that covers the broad part of it, that yellows at the rim, right? So the outer portion is called as a yellowish in color and meets with the sunlust leave the marshes brim, right? So the poet describes in a beautiful manner that the color runs around the sky, the rim, right? Ends where the sun has dipped down below the brim. So where the sun is means touched it, which is called as a brim. A reader is now aware that the sun has almost disappeared from the sky, and it appears as if a storm is about to drench the land. The land which is means stated here as called as a desert type, right? In the second line, the poet also stated means the Mars is described as having lip and brim. Lip and that's called as meets with sunlust lip and Mars's brim. So here Mars is described with the adjectival word lip and brim. The ecosystem within it is contained, right? It remains inside the enclosed area. Which one? That called as the Mars. Inside enclosed area means covering with the particular area, while the rest of the world operates differently. Means the poet takes two different world. One world is called as a Marshland and the other one is called as a different, right? So and Mars is described as a lip and brim, right? So and that's the region. The poet beautifully stated two of the things here. A thin weight sky, so describing the means sky and stating about how the around looks like yellowish in color. At the same time, the poet is stating about the dusk time when the means the sun is going to disappear, and at the same time it has a kind of a means a touch in the midst of it. The pools low lying, dank with moss and mold, glint through their mildews like large cups of gold. So the next couplet, this is the second couplet, and the next couplet describe the pools, right? So that make up most of the floor of the marsh. So due to the rain, you could say that most of the means areas of marshlands are covered with the water and seem like a pool, right? They are low in the ground and filled with nothing but moss and mold, right? So when we are talking about moss and mold, it indicates about nothing but certain areas where the water covers and produces with the some kind of a means a fungi, right? Fungi and also mold, right? That is what the pole
That is
flow.
fungi.
Sorry,
That is fungi.
again, sir. ଆପଣ ଯାଉ କଥା ତ କହିଲେ ମୁଁ ତ ଭାବିଲି so I thought like you are not going to speak today. What happened to you? Where you were?
I am in Chennai.
No, means you didn't speak for a while actually. Okay, so I'm talking about moss and mold. So mold is nothing but a you could say that a hollow container, right? To give shape to the molten, or you can say that hard liquid material, or you can say that a kind of a character also, nature's character, right? So the poet stated about nothing but what means once the rain means falls at the same time uh, uh, it creates the kind of a pools that make up the most of the means floor of the marsh, right? And they are low in the ground and filled with nothing but moss and mold, right? So moss is indicating about means certain kind of a greeny areas, right? So mold is referring to nothing but the container. So it filled the container, it filled the places, right? So coming out with the fungi, right? These areas are not pleasant, right? So at least to those who do not naturally reside within the area, right? While they might be dank, they are also clearly fertile, right? They might be dank. Dank means uh, while they might be dank, they are also clearly
Hello.
yes, hello, are you all
Yes,
there?
yes.
So what do you mean by dank?
Yes.
What do you mean by dank? It's called as a damp and cold. The meaning
Yes,
of
sir.
unpleasantly dank and damp and cold. So while they might be unpleasant cold, they are also clearly fertile. So you could say that not the good place to cultivate, but at the same not a good place to reside. But at the same time, these are the places are called as a good for fertility, right? Plants grow heartily within and around the waters, right? Plants grow heartily within around the waters. So the waters themselves still glint, right? Glint through the layer of mosses. So it means glint is indicating nothing but, what do you mean by glint? So what is the meaning of
I
glint?
don't know.
That called as a give out of reflect small flashes of light. So you would find out that when the water flows, right? So you would find out water flows on what? Now water flows on means those of the moss, right? Creating a kind of a layer, and that could be visible clearly. And that is what the poet stated in the second couplet, that the pools low lying, dank
What
with,
is mildew?
sorry, what is?
Mildew.
Yeah. So think of it, the line is called as a glint through their mildews. What do you think that? So it is something called as
The
a kind of
mildew.
a layer, right? You could see that means it is a
Sir,
conspicuous.
mildew is, sir, it does means fungus or
Yeah, white
algae fungi.
white thread like a hyphae and a fruiting structure produced by various fungi, right? So that is what called as a means a mildew. Why here the idea of mildew is given? Now, because once water flows on certain things, what happened? Now, due to the cold, it turns out to the means, white snow type, right? That is what the poet say. The poles low lying, dank with moss and mold, so glint through their mildews like large cups of gold. Like large cups of gold means what? Now, seeming like what? The whole place is covered with means covers with the water substances, and it also appears like variety of color into it. So, therefore, means the poet stated in the couplet that they might be dank, they are also clearly fertile. So, this place is not a good place to reside, but at the same time, the soil is nothing but a fertile one. Plants grow in a beautiful manner within and around the water, right? The waters themselves still means putting a layer, right? So putting a layer and also indicating nothing but the means glint through the layer of moss. Glint through the layer of moss means that is something called as a create a small flashes, right? Or appears like a shining one, right? And also on what means on that particular layer of moss. Moss means indicating about fungi, right? That is what the poet stated in the first stanza. Okay, so if you go to the next stanza, the second stanza is indicating about uh, among the wild rice in the still lagoon. Among the wild rice in the still lagoon, in monotone, the lizard shrills his tune. The wild goose humming, six are sheltering, where rushes grow and oozing lichens clinch. Now you find out that this stanza is simply talking about nothing but the variety of sounds and variety of characteristic appear from the means various variety of animals. In the next, in this particular stanza, so you would find out the third couplet, right? Stated about the speaker moves to describe the wild rice, right? So the wild rice means uh, if there is no cultivation, where that wild rice come out? Now, the poet stated that that is growing on the land. Here, the speaker refers to the marsh as containing a still lagoon. So, you know that during the night time, if you go to the kind of a place which is covered with the water and also places having with the up and down big and small rocks and covering some part with the grassy land, right? And some of the rock covering with nothing but the moss, right? Greeny substances, and it also shines during the night time, right? So the poet stated means that it is a growing land. The speaker refers to the marsh as containing a still lagoon, blue lagoon, right? Lagoon is something indicating about the haven, right? The water is stagnant, constant, but as previously stated, that does not mean there is not life. You can't say that if this place is something called as a cool and water flows here, right? So most of the area is covering like a pool. So it was important for Johnson to present this piece with a larger details to create a kind of a picture in the mind of the reader, but also the smaller ones, such as you could say that the presence of different animals stated about lizard to complete the environment. So he stated about these small pieces of information help a reader to fully see, visualize what this place is, what this place looks like, to exclude them in favor of means judging out larger swaths of land, right, would be doing an injustice to the reality of the marshland. So he did not want to point out a means different kind of a land. He is trying to give up, eulogize, or praising to the means praising to the land, and stating about this land is also the land of what means uh, different different animals who could sustain here, and that presents nothing but the description of the environment, or telling that place is nothing but filled with environment. The poet also said, among the wild rice in the still lagoon, so the lagoon which is covering with the wild rice, so the monotonous sound, monotonous means the kind of a unique sound of the lizard. So when it makes a shrilling means loud cry in his tune, right? Now you could find out lizard is taken as nothing but a means a personification. The wild goose is also there, homing, seeks a sheltering. So the lizard is said to be shrill in his tune. The animal is faintly personified, right? Personified is nothing but a one of the literary devices that refers to the projection of human characteristic onto inanimate objects. So यहाँ पे आपको means और एक means literary devices मिला, that's called as a personification. और ये जो personification किसका किसके साथ हुआ है, यहाँ पे जो word है huge, which is comparing with the lizard. So the animal is faintly personified as its small cries are described as being musical in nature. So the elevates it to a level above what one would normally regard a lizard on. So you would definitely consider that what lizard is all about and what kind of a sound the lizard have, right? But the poet is stated the sound of the lizard is nothing but a musical in nature, right? So then the speaker next referred to the wild goose. The speaker describes another animal, the wild goose. It is homing, right? So if you talk about that homing, so what do you mean by homing? What is the meaning of homing? Hello? So capable of returning home. Capable of returning home. That's what is called as a homing means. So the speaker describes another animal, the wild goose. It is homing. The creature is single-minded. So who? Wild goose. In its search for seeking shelter. Seeking shelter means wandering for a place to settle. It knows that it knows that somewhere in amongst the rushes, right, or long grass and the oozing lichens, right, there is somewhere it can rest. Who can rest? So the wild goose can rest. From these first few lines, one should have a clear picture of how the land is important to both plants and non-human animals. It plays host to a great variety of species, which are only expanded upon in the means, final 6 lines, you could say that, right? Now, if I go to the last stanza, the last stanza is stated about late cranes with a heavy wing. Late cranes with a heavy wings and lazy flight, right? Sell up the silence with the nearing night. And like a spirit, what happens, swathed in some soft well, stills twilight and its shadows over the swell. Hushed lie the sedge and the vapors creep, thick, grey, and humid, while the marshes sleep. So, if you observe that the line stated, late cranes with a heavy wing and lazy flight sell up the silence with the nearing night. It means towards the end of the poem, right, the poet stated that the night is coming more strongly. Late cranes with a heavy wing and lazy flight sell up the silence with the nearing night. So the discussion has progressed through the setting of the sun. When we say that setting means where that poem takes place. So here the setting is nothing but the Marshland, right? So, and this place is called as a real place, right? So here the poet is stated the description has progressed through the place of the sun to the nearing night. So night is coming, approaching, right? It is under the silence of the sky. The sky is completely silent. That the lead cranes are flying lazily, right? Lead cranes are referring to the birds. So they are flying lazily, means they are also tired. They are sailing up from the marshlands to fly in the peace of the evening. There is no rush actually, no quickness evident in their actions. So they were going in a means smoothly. They move without the pretense or any particular pressing need, right? So that is why the poet stated, let cranes with a heavy wing. Heavy wing indicates about the tiredness and lazy flight. So they were going from one part of the place to the other part of the place with nothing but a tiredness, right? So sell up the silence with the nearing night. Once that evening comes, and also means when the night approaches, so at the same time the whole environment is completely silent, and like a spirit swathed in some soft well. So in the next couplet also the speaker describes means how the night is taking over the land, and like a spirit. So who is spirit here? It is referring to the night, right? So swathed in some soft well. Well is called as a odini in a Hindi we say. Soft well. So covering in some soft well, still twilight and its a shadows over the swell. Right. So the poet stated that the speaker describes how the night is taking over the land. It is not bad, right? Malevolent. It is not malevolent. Malevolent means something which is called as a jagadalu, right? Or called as a something which is a harmful, or called as a foreboding in any way. So the poet described as being like a spirit, right? That moves slowly. Which one moves slowly? That called as a darkness. That moves slowly. The darkness comes over the land and takes away the remaining bits of twilight. Now there are shadows over the swell, or you can say that the low valley areas or hilly areas, so they were also covered in the mostly flat marshes, right? So some parts are flat, some parts are covered with the low and high valley areas, so they are also covered with the night. The final couplet that you find out is called as a hushed lie the sages, and the vapors creep thick, grey, and humid while the marshes sleep. So the final couplet speaks on the what? Hush. Hush means called as a that called as a kind of a sound of wind that takes over the sages. It means a plant that grows in wetlands. So when the wind moves, it makes a kind of a sound. Along with all the other creatures and organic element of the Mars. So they are silent. We only hear the sound of the wind, right? So the air is thick, gray, and humid, pressing down on the marshes as they sleep. It seems like what? They all were taking the rest. When morning comes, the great variety of life will become active once more. So that is what the poet said, hushed lie the sages and the vapors creep. Right? Vapors means that called as a small elements which are covering the uh, high and low areas. Right? So the place is completely silent. It is the wind that moves, right? So in between that means grasses, right? So and also some of the flat areas are there, or some of the areas were nothing but called as a low and high. So thick, gray, humid. So the environment is nothing but means called as a having with the cold, right? Having with the grays in color, and seeming like uh, everybody is taking their rest. So that's what the poet stated. And it indicates that they all are preparing for the next morning, right? To enjoy the variety of life, become active once again, right? That is what the poet stated in this poem called as a Marshland. So if you say that it is the poet who tries to narrate or describe the beauty of the nature in the form of the poem, right? Are you all left or what?
Sir, Amit has
No,
3%.
sir.
Sir, I am here with 5%.
3%.
I'm here with 40% laptop, 40%. Sorry, 45% laptop, 45% mobile.
I am here with 50%.
And I'm
And
3%.
Sujan? Sujan already there.
100.
Yeah. Just give me a
Sujan
second,
100%
dad's
as
calling.
he never left his laptop uncharged.
अबे ଶୁଣୁଥିଲ ନା କୁଆଡେ ଶୋଇ ପଡୁଥିଲ?
Sir,
Emotionally.
sir, Ashutosh 5 rupees with his 35 rupees.
Yeah, please send it to.
Then sir, you will also be fined 5 rupees.
Ha.
Why, sir, what you say?
Nothing.
Sir will be just be like, मेरी बिल्ली मेरे को में
अरे क्या हुआ? अमित 10 rupees.
Hey, Srujan 5 rupees. Srujan 5 rupees.
Sujan 10 rupees.
Yeah.
Not my fault.
Okay, guys, we shall leave for the day. Thank you. We'll meet in the next class. Till then, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you,
Bye.
Sujan. Thank you, Videsh. Thank you, Ashu. Thank you, Pritesh. Good night. Good night. Good night.